Hey guys, this is Lawrence. Welcome back to the Ketones and Coffee podcast, and thank you so much for tuning in. I know everyone here that's listening are here because you want to create a sustainable, healthy lifestyle to the ketogenic diet. And every single week, I try to bring in guests that not only has the knowledge, but these individuals has also been through the same trials that we all have been through when it comes down to our search for a better health. We get together in hopes to assist you on your own journey. I'm so excited for this, guys. Stick around because our guest today is a health and performance coach with her mission to show individuals that being healthy doesn't need to be complicated. She holds a Master of Science degree in Kinesiology from Indiana University and completed her MBA in the executive program at the University of San Francisco. Most recently, she earned the title Coach Practitioner from the Noakes Foundation, a select group of individuals chosen to train in the low carbohydrate and keto lifestyle. She is also the co-owner of Square One Wellness, providing low carbohydrate, ketogenic nutrition coaching, and personalized fitness training to individuals, groups, and organizations. She also wrote a book called Finding Lifestyle Sanity, a survival guide teaching food philosophy, exercise essentials, and mindset. I'm so excited for this. I'm here with Krisna Hanks. Krisna, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for that lovely introduction. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here and honored to be on your program.
I'm honored to have you on, and just learning about your story and how it all came to be for you is such something that, you know, everybody should listen to, because we are in for a treat today, guys. I'm so excited to have you on and get started. I'm so honored. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
So reading your story got me excited because this is one of the things that I love discussing, which is first all understanding the importance of nutrition, right? And what really means to be healthy. And for me, more importantly, just changing that narrative around health. Love how passionate you are about this subject. And you know, you're right. Health doesn't have to be complicated. People have, you know, such fear of, you know, what healthy means, what it means to be healthy, that they end up putting it off until maybe it's too late, right? But most of it can actually be reversed through proper nutrition and guidance, right? Which we'll get through later on. So how are you? How's everything going, Krishna?
I'm very good, very good. And I agree so much with you. I think over the years, and certainly I'm several decades above you in age, is that we have made everything that concerns health super complicated. And actually, if we go back even, you know, not that far away, let's say back before we even had nutritional guidelines, which the first guidelines in the USA were in 1977. There wasn't anyone sort of saying, you should eat this, don't eat that. Maybe people were left to their own guidance there. And since then, we have made everyone afraid of everything, afraid of meat, afraid of the sunshine, afraid of different foods, particularly when it comes to saturated fat. So my mission as a health coach has been to try to sort of calm down the noise, get back to the basics, and even something as simple as, could we encourage people to eat meals and not snacks? So I think there's a whole lot here that we can sort of dive into. But I think what you set the tone for is this idea that let's just focus on what's really basic. And when it comes to nutrition, think about nutrition as performance, not as punishment or reward. So what foods are going to fuel me? What foods are going to help me last from one meal to the meal, right? Even something as simple as that.
Yes, I love where you started there, is nutrition, yes, it doesn't have to be so difficult. It's focusing on what foods actually make you feel good, right? Getting to that baseline again, and we'll get to that later on. But I'd love to get into your food story because a part of my mission is why I started all of this is how can I get this information across, right? Telling our story that led us to the path has the power to not only inform, but also it has the ability to resonate with people as well in a much, much deeper level, in a way that it's easily digestible. And I love your mission because you simplify things for people so that they know that it doesn't have to be complicated. Health is something that is, can be done in your own home, and it can be done, and you can reverse chronic illness, just by following this guidance, right? So I understand that you've experienced a health crisis in your 40s that led you to a path of, understanding the importance of nutrition, not only for yourself, but now helping other people do the same thing through your coaching. So for me, let's go back and tell us what has led you to the path today.
Absolutely. And I think for all of us, everyone probably has a food story or a health journey in that way. And it's those journeys, I totally agree with you, that give us more insight and understand also what individuals are going through. And I think we're seeing that also more in our fields. Doctors who've had their own journey are speaking out. Think of Dr. Tro or Dr. Philip Ovadia, Brian Linsky, many, many others in that. So my journey goes back to me, obviously, and just a little bit before the food journey starts. So I had, I call it another life. I was a professional dancer. I started dancing at the age of 15. And that career took me up until around the age of 43. So quite long in this perspective of a professional dance life. But towards the end of my professional dance life, I started getting ill, is what I would say. I started having incredible joint pains, joints that would swell up and sort of hamper just doing regular things like sit to stand, stand to sit, or passive things of even just, being on the floor and then struggling to get up. You could see it in my fingers. You could see it in my elbows, shoulders. It was just sort of permeating my whole body. But it manifested quite a lot in the spine and the hips. And then this caused me to do what I call the medical hamster wheel, meaning go to one doctor, they sort of give you their idea, oh, let's test for this, oh, it must be an autoimmune disease, looks like some rare form of rheumatoid arthritis, get tested for all kinds. And this went on for about 2 years. So I felt at a certain point there wasn't any other space on my arm to have blood drawn. It was just incredible amount of testing, hypothesis. Till at one point, one doctor said, well, maybe you're just extremely depressed and need to go have therapy because of your change. However, it was actually one of the happiest times of my life. I just recently met my partner, who we've been married now together over 20 years. Things were going really well. I had a new job. Anyway, It wasn't, in my opinion, that. So I sat down to have dinner with a friend of mine who was a physical therapist. He said, look, you had these 2 years of doing all this stuff. And he said, what about your diet? And I, of course, bristled, eyebrows up, and said, what do you mean my diet's perfect? I've been vegetarian for 20 years. So the typical Dutch fashion, he looked at me like, I'm just saying. And I went home that night and I thought about it, and I called him directly the next morning to apologize because I thought I'd been kind of a jerk. And I said, I'm listening. And I thought about it, and anybody who's been in a particular nutrition, I want to call it box, for a long time, it's really hard to mentally grasp there's something different out there. So I took a kind of slow period. I did probably what many people do who are starting to add a few things back in, like some meat, some eggs, some fish, and then slowly started doing things like broth and all the kind of stuff. Well, I started getting better. And that was pure revelation to me, right? Well, how could it just be diet or nutrition? And then my lovely partner read this article a little while later called "What If It's All Been a Big Fat Lie" by Gary Taubes, which was one of his first articles. And the light bulb went off in me of, well, the whole hormonal theory, meaning it's not just about exercise more, eat less, but that it's about blood sugar and insulin, and not just when it comes to gaining weight. I didn't have a weight issue. I had a joint and tissue issue. So obviously there was a lot of inflammation in my body. And where I hypothesize about it, and many do who have a joint, is when I took meat and fish and all those things out of my diet, I substituted rice, bread, pasta, really heavily loaded on the carbohydrates. Of course, as living in the Netherlands, they're a very heavy bread culture. And by lowering those, adding more, meat, fish, those kind of things back in, the inflammation started to subside, right? And bit by bit, I got better. And then in 2007, when Gary Taubes came out with his original book, Good Calories, Bad Calories, we just went down the whole rabbit hole of everything, read everything we could, and it just made complete sense to me. And I'd seen firsthand the change. And who knows, I think everyone has, was it the combination of very strict lifestyle as a dancer, a lot of stress, the combination of a really carb-centric diet, those two things, the combination. Either way, I just saw throughout my own experience the power of nutrition. And then having been also in a movement base, like coming from dance, I was a yoga teacher, Pilates teacher. I've been my whole life in the fitness industry, and seeing this concept that eat less, move more doesn't work. Whether you're dealing with joint issues, you're dealing with weight gain, or any types of things, people were actually doing that, but it wasn't successful. So I think my firsthand experience gave me a lot of empathy to say, wow, maybe this can also work for other individuals, and thus wanting to really study the low carb ketogenic lifestyle.
There's so much there. I want to dive in deeper into that transition, because for me, just hearing about you talk about your story, being in that position, having to quickly pivot into that the new lifestyle. And you talked about when you heard about it, you were shocked in the idea of, since you don't have any weight issues, then diet must be not the issue, right? And the weight issue somehow, not having the weight issue somehow became more difficult for you to pinpoint the issue, because this is 2 years. You talked about having to find out what was going on, and nobody was able to give you an answer to the question that you're looking for. And somehow I think that, you know, you taking in this information at the right time when you were, would you say that you were desperate at the time when you heard of this information?
Most definitely. Most definitely. And I think, you know, we invest a lot of trust, power into the medical system. When we have an issue, and I speak generally, and I myself did it, sort of felt that the answer should come from a medical professional. However, there's a lot more to it. And as I've seen throughout my journey and studying with people, nutrition is not something a lot of medical, whether we speak of doctors, nurses, people, are actually trained in. Their schooling is specific to their training. And through my process of having someone, well, he was a physical therapist, he was still sort of thinking, you know, about the body in its totality, right? He had, you know, worked with me as a dancer and sort of thinking, well, there's some other piece here to this puzzle that seems to be working negatively. And yes, it was dramatic to me to think, wow, if I just change this piece, certain things happen. And I think I remember reading the book by Denise Minger called something about the dietary guidelines. I can't remember the time. And she said, you know, that on her journey when she was raw vegan and her teeth started to fall out basically at a very young age, said if your body doesn't get proper nutrition, it will search it out somewhere else. So this sort of resonated with me and saying, well, maybe it was trying to search it out in my joints. It was trying to, you know, pull some nutrition from somewhere else in that way. And it's all these various things that influence us and start to help build a picture of other pieces that might be able to support a healthier lifestyle. And I think we've underestimated the power of nutrition.
Do you think that this situation has improved since you experienced this? Because many people, I could imagine many people are still struggling with this, with the same issues that you're having, right? At 40 years old, you shouldn't be experiencing that much of, you know, extreme. You described it as an extreme or as a severe joint issue that you were having at the time. I could imagine that there are still people that are searching for answers because low carb, and it may be mainstream for weight loss, but it's not for nutrition. It's not for health in general, right? So I think the problem lies, where the problem lies is how do people find this information much quicker? Because if I'm experiencing joint and back issues and I'm from the outside looking in, I look lean, I look healthy, I look fit. I think that's where the problem is that I'm not finding this information, right? I'm not finding this information from my doctor, and they're not advising nutrition since I'm looking lean, I'm looking fit. So has this situation improved since you've experienced this, do you think?
Yes, I think you touch on a really important point. For many individuals, if weight is not an issue, it's like they never will go to the nutrition conversation, right? Because they think, right, you know, of course, they do your weight, your BMI, your body mass index, and everything looks great. So it must be something else, right? And I know for a fact certainly for many people who are lean, that conversation never comes up. So I think what more people are seeking out is also why health coaching has become much more in the mainstream. I think even a few years ago, the New York Times had an article saying everyone needs a health coach. Well, of course, I'm a health coach, so that sounds great. But in essence, I think everyone needs a support team, and everyone needs to take other opinions. We don't think anything about getting a second or a third opinion from a doctor when we have an issue. However, what about getting a second or third opinion from someone else, right? Outside, whether we think of it as alternative, be it a health coach, a nutritionist, a physical therapist, or a chiropractor, someone who's taking in other information and helping you to sort of say, there's other ways of looking at this. And I think, again, to your point, is with lean people, right? They can also have issues. You don't need to just be overweight or even obese to be dealing with some kind of chronic issue or joint inflammation. And I think we see the word inflammation used a lot. And we now need to broaden the conversation to say there are movement situations that can alleviate some of the issues, but that needs to be coupled also with proper nutrition that is not adding to the inflammation in the body. And what we see a lot, and particularly from out the low carb community, we're very want to raise the awareness about the deleterious effects of polyunsaturated fatty acids, or what we call the PUVAs, those seed oils. We call them. Some people call them vegetable oils, that also are showing in the research that they're highly inflammatory, and those are in pretty much all across all fast food restaurants, a lot of other even good restaurants out there. So I think it is as a health coach and someone working in the field, is to raise the awareness to individuals that you don't just have to have a weight issue. If you are struggling with inflammation, joint issues, lack of sleep, low energy, if various different things within a healthy lifestyle are not optimal, start thinking about nutrition. Start thinking about what it is that you're fueling your body with.
Let's talk about first steps. Let's say I've come across this information that this could be a solution for me. I want you to talk us through. I know you talked about, having to read a book that resonated with you, that made all the sense in the world to you. What are the other steps that you took for you to be able to grasp this information? Or if you would go back in time and do something different, is there something that you would do different for you to be able to, understand and speed up the process for you? For people that are listening right now that are in search of how they can quickly pivot, because this is an information that requires a lot of unlearning, requires a lot about education, because there are a lot of things that we don't understand before that's causing a lot of these issues that has to be addressed, that isn't being addressed by the mainstream, right? And that alone creates so much problems within our society. We have an epidemic of obesity that's going on, chronic illness, heart disease, type 2 diabetes in the States, in North America, that needs to be addressed. And that's happening because nobody in the mainstream is addressing it unless you come across this information. Mainly it comes across when you're already having issues. Like yourself, you had struggled with, chronic inflammation for a couple years until you've come across this information. And I'd love for you to go back in time for people that are listening, that are ready to start this lifestyle. How would you start this lifestyle if you had to go back?
Great question. Great question, Lawrence. So first and foremost, I would say if anyone is on any medications, they must work with their medical profession. Because anytime that you start to make dietary changes, nutritional changes, lifestyle changes, and you are on medications, you need to be guided and have someone working closely with you, right? Across the board, male or female, at any age. I think that would be first and foremost. Second, I would say start it by elimination. So I think wherever nutritional path you're in, let's say you're in the low carb lifestyle. Let's say you're following the low fat lifestyle, or you're following, some type of mix of plant-based and that. By eliminating grains and sugars, you take one big, huge step to lowering inflammation in the body. And that in and of itself will be a huge change and very dramatic for a lot of people. I think the wonderful Dr. Sarah Halberg, who passed away sadly last year, she has the most fantastic TED Talk out there. I think that's been viewed millions of times, where she talks about what she did as a doctor that she recommends to her type 2 diabetes, that she did it, even though she doesn't have it. And she calls it eliminating GPS, grains, potatoes, and starches. And that is a big first step. If you can do that, right, you will start, I believe, to see changes. And just by one sort of step there towards that, as well as doing your own investigation, I like to say, the more you arm yourself, listening, reading, following different people, you can hear their stories, right? Because just like your program here, you're having people talk about their personal experience to understand what people are going, right? But let's say you do that first step. You're able to eliminate grains and sugars, and that's where Dr. William Davis, the Grain Brain, or the Wheat Belly, is his book, focuses on. I think the next step would be to see, can you focus on meals? Again, my whole thing is about making it simple. We've been ingrained, particularly in the United States, to eat all day long. And one thing that I didn't really understand when I was struggling in that is really the blood sugar insulin issue. And that's impact on your body, your hormonal system, everything concerned around metabolic health. And if you do that simple thing of say, you know what, whether I'm a 2 meal a day person or a 3 meal a day person, I'm only going to have meals. I'm not going to snack in between. And that also means I'm not going to have a frappuccino or a smoothie or some drink that you might not think is a snack, but is heavily loaded in sugar. I think by doing those two simple things, right, eliminating grains and sugars, eliminating snacks, you will already start to see and feel some changes in your body. And then it's sort of open your horizon, sort of say, well, what do I need maybe if I want to enhance it a little bit more? And that might take sort of really closely working with someone, whether it's a health coach, a life coach, or someone who can sort of help you gather up more information. And maybe even if you're still having difficulty with various things, you might need to go one step further. I mean, let's talk a little bit about here. A lot of people's having really good success right now with the carnivore diet, right? And what is the carnivore diet? It's basically an elimination diet. You've eliminated everything except meat, fish, and eggs into your diet. And sadly, we've given vegetables a free rein. We think they're completely healthy, but many people have issues with vegetables, whether nightshade or different ones, whether it's due to the phytates, the oxalates in that way. So the carnivore diet is strictly elimination diet. And that might be, for some people, very effective. We're seeing really good results with people with Hashimoto's, autoimmune diseases, even depression, right? Michaela Peterson talks about how she conquered her depression, right, through a meat-based diet. I think those would be kind of, the starting steps, let's say the starting blocks to getting going.
Absolutely. And there's so much stories out there, so much keto success stories, carnivore success stories out there that one can read that may help you, maybe Coach's Krishna's story will resonate with you today and will give you that sort of boost into finding this lifestyle. But there are a lot of stories out there that has really proven that this lifestyle is reversing chronic illness, inflammation in the body, that you can look up and see for yourself. And if this is the lifestyle that you've chosen to live, there is a mindset. There is a mindset part of it that a coach can help you with. That it maybe if you're somebody that has an affinity with sweets and high carb diets, which is somewhat the biggest hurdle in the beginning. But what coaches Krishna's talking about is once you eliminate those drinks, those high inflammatory foods, then you will start to experience clarity, and those joint pains will suddenly go away. And there are coaches out there that can help you if you want to increase that into a much more efficient lifestyle. A coach can help you do that. Love the message you want to get across, Coach. And feeling good is so much obtainable at any age. And you got into coaching. I want to get into that, on how you decided and what has driven you to become a coach. Can you tell that story to our listeners, and what has driven you to wanting to coach other people?
Absolutely. Well, I think coaching, my affinity for coaching goes back to the place where I grew up. So I come from the Midwest, born and raised in a small town, born in one small town called Alton, raised in another small town called Quincy, Illinois. My father was a basketball coach. My brother was also a basketball coach. Both of them very successful for quite some time. So I have that back in my, let's say, distant past, watching how people motivated people, the challenges of working not only with individuals, but with teams. My father's way of babysitting would be take us to the gym and let us run around while he had practice. So I had that piece growing up. As a professional dancer, I had lots of great teachers, mentors. I taught dance. I taught Pilates, Iyengar yoga. So I was a personal trainer. So I've always been working with people. However, as I grew older and continued to work one-on-one with people and in small groups, I just saw the struggle grow even more concerning weight, concerning other health concerns, whether it be joint issues or as people aged, they just didn't age well. And wanting to be able to help them also find some solutions as I had individuals help me during my struggles. Getting into health coaching seems a sort of natural segue to that, coming from these movement-based backgrounds and seeing that we need to help people more than just give them a good workout. That they're struggling on whether struggling with food addiction issues, struggling with trying to figure out what foods work with them. You know, they might have the exercise piece down really well. They know what they like to do. And particularly in my age group, right? I'm 65. So I'm officially, Medicare age. And in that age group, people, I don't want to generalize. I mean, are just not looking really great at the moment. They're not moving well. They struggle with various weight and chronic conditions. They struggle with different kinds of food issues. So my passion is to help, particularly the older individuals, and help them understand that there is still a lot you can do. And I think that's where coaching has kind of sort of permeated into filling this gap of support for individuals. I'm definitely a believer that we need community, and particularly when it comes to our health. And you will see a lot of individuals, have sort of figured it out on their own via various social media avenues, right? Whether they've got individuals they follow on Twitter or Facebook that have helped them sort of work through their health struggles. And while there is the negative component to social media, there is the positive component, which means it can provide you a community, right? And not everyone has the budget for a coach. But if you broaden your horizons and you open to various communities, you can also have dialogue with individuals and help, find your own sort of support team.
If people would only know how much good they're going to feel after transitioning into the low carb lifestyle, I don't think budget will be an issue. It's just that getting through people about this information that's frankly not being talked about enough. It's been talking about, you talked about food addiction, you talked about type 2 diabetes. Those avenues, those topics, we need to talk more about. Not just weight loss. I know it's a great tool for weight loss, but there are other things. Now you talked about Mikhail Peterson talking about her battle with depression when she went carnivore. Her symptoms have really been reversed when it comes to depression. So there is so much potential in this space. There's so much potential for other people to be able to regain their health back and revitalize their life. You talked about, your mission at the stage of your life. You're still helping people, and this just is you setting that example is doing so much for people. And I love what you're doing. I love your mission, and I love that you're continuing to speak on topics that are really not talked about. People younger talk about how they're accepting their chronic illness, that they're not helped. It's just how it is. It's age. It comes with age, and people are confused because like we said, this information has to come from doctors, right? And if we're not getting that information from our doctors, then how can people continue to search for? Because you've in your story, seek different opinions, and people are not necessarily doing that. They have a doctor that they've been with for a long time, and if they're not addressing the issue, and if they're saying that you must be, like your doctor said, you must be depressed about your situation and that change in lifestyle that you were on. And I just want people to understand that there is another way. There's another way. It's not your age. It's not where you're in. It's not what stage you're in. You can be helped, and love that you are here, Coach, because that sets a great example for people to follow.
Sorry.
Go
you
ahead.
hit on so many beautiful things there, Lorenz. I think one of the things that I will always say that health is more than a number on a scale. Health is so much more. And as an individual, you need to say, what is health to me? Is health being able to play with my grandkids? Being able to sit on the floor and stand up after that? Is health being able to carry 2 bags of heavy groceries from the car to the house? Is health being able to travel to all the places that I would love to go to? That health is just being able to enjoy the weekend and be active. You need to determine what health is to you, right? As part of that, think of it also as performance. You hit on so many things. We talk a lot about weight. Weight is just one component. It's a challenging one because many people on low calorie diet, they'll lose the weight, gain the weight, lose the weight, gain the weight. That's not sustainable. And we know that every time you do that, you gain a little bit more back. But let's talk about mood. Let's talk about energy, right? Let's talk about being able to focus, right? That you're feeling good mental clarity. Your nutritional path should enhance those things. If you're on the roller coaster of up, right? You're really high, you just had, some good sugary thing, and then you get dropped off the roller coaster at the bottom, that you're being like slung around by your food choices, that's not sustainable either, right? And I think we need to open the door to saying, let's think about the foods that allow us to have all those other aspects of life that are important. Again, mood, energy, focus, right? Sustainability. And that brings up, I think, an important point. Dr. Philip Ovadia, who's a heart surgeon, he had a question, I think it was yesterday on Twitter. Has your doctor ever asked you about your metabolic health? My answer was, no, not one single doctor in my whole life. No. And I think if there's anything your readers should say, if your doctor is not asking you about metabolic health, you need to ask him or her about it. Because if you've got really good metabolic health, and the latest study from Science Studies says only 7% of Americans have good metabolic health. That went from only 12%. We're dropped down now since COVID to 7%. That's dramatic. And by improving those, what are the markers of good metabolic health, right? So that means we need to look at the flip side. What's metabolic syndrome? Metabolic syndrome is high triglycerides, high blood pressure, high fasting glucose, high waist circumference, and the fifth one is low HDL. Those 5 markers of metabolic syndrome Everyone should know about themselves, because that gives you a really good indication of how's your metabolic system doing, right? And to be classified as having metabolic syndrome, you need, well, some people say 2 of those markers, some people say 3. That doesn't matter. Even if just your waist circumference is on the high end, that means there's a probability, right, of visceral fat. And you could still have a good BMI with that, right? You could still have a good weight, and your doctor would say, oh, you're good to go, right? So I think that would be another step when you ask about what would be the steps, is asking your providers, how's my metabolic health? Well, how am I doing on those markers?
Absolutely. And I think a part of that is just us taking control of our own health. I love that you said that if your doctor is not asking, then you have to ask your doctor, because this, at the end of the day, your doctor is busy with, because you're only going to see your doctor for 15 to 20 minutes, and your doctor can't possibly tell you everything that's going on. You have to tell him what's going on, because you live with yourself and you know your symptoms, right? And that's part of taking control and not giving somebody the, obviously control of your own life, because at the end of the day, you know your symptoms, you know what you eat, you know your lifestyle. And also another thing is our doctors actually test according to our age, right? I'm 31 years old, and I have friends that are type 2 diabetic. And if you're testing according to age, then my age group will probably not know until it's too late, right? And so that's another thing that people have to know is this disease isn't about age anymore. This is about your lifestyle and how you live your lifestyle. And so if you're out there, if you're somebody that's check how metabolic healthy you are, first of all, whatever your age is, and just take control. We need better system, we need better tools, and just take control of your life, because it's not up to them to set your own. You have to take control of your own life. I love that. It's not that simple as well. I'm saying to people that it is a simple change, but it's not an easy change. That's why if you're somebody that needs more support, there's coaches out there that can help you ease your way into this lifestyle, because we understand that this is not easy. And if it was, then we wouldn't have any of these problems, right? And so I love that you talked about that, and it's certainly something that people need to hear. I want to get to if you have any tips for people that are willing to make a change today. What are any simple changes that they can make right now? Any actionable items or tips that you can share?
Absolutely. And I just want to touch one thing of what you mentioned right there on age. In your age group, much, much younger than me, and seeing type 2 diabetes come out, is that is the time when you can turn things around, right? And to ask more questions, right? For instance, we know that fasting glucose is just a snapshot back of the last 24 hours. If you've got type 2 diabetes in the history of your family, you want to be asking more questions. Maybe you ask your physician to say, what about a hemoglobin A1C test, which looks back over the last 3 months? How am I doing? Am I in the pre-diabetic range? Because, Tim Noakes and many other individuals have said that diabetes takes around 10 years to manifest. So if you're in that pre-diabetes range, right, at 31, what's going to happen at 41? right? So now is the time to take action and ask critical questions. So I just wanted to make that it is not just my age group that needs to feel the need to think critically and ask a lot of questions there. But tips, I think, go back to the basics. So when it comes to movement, obviously I come from a movement background. There's two components. There is your exercise program, and there is try to move as much as you can during the day. We know that sitting for 8 hours is not good for anybody, right? And I'm not even talking anything related to weight. I'm just talking about being able to move in a graceful way as we move up the age ladder. So your exercise programs, and break up your amount of sitting time. So after this interview, I will definitely be standing up. That's one piece. I go back to what I said, focus on meals. See if you can eliminate snacking, right? Snacking is not only hard on our blood sugar and insulin, but it discourages us from eating proper nutrition at the meals. I see a lot of individuals, particularly females, in my case, under eating on protein. And a lot of that comes from they had too many snacks. And by the time they sit down to dinner, they're not hungry. And then if you can eliminate the snacks, go back to meals. If you're wanting to make real change in trying to see which foods are not good for you, you have to start eliminating things, right? Whether you start first with just eliminating sugar, right? There's a lot of fun little events out there like Kick the Sugar or that you can join some group to do that. Then maybe you have to start to eliminate something else. Maybe you have to start to eliminate all grains. And go one step further. So start your own exploratory investigation. There's also two pieces that we haven't even touched on. You need adequate sunshine. We've again been told to fear the sun, right? But everything, if nothing else, COVID has brought up the fact that we need good vitamin D levels. And I encourage getting vitamin D from the sun, not just from a supplement. And sleep. I'm a huge proponent of regular sleep. I go to bed at the same time during the week as I do on the weekend. Our body likes regularity. So those two pieces would help just turn a different sort of, open the door to a new pathway.
I love that. Sunshine, sleep. Amazing. Thank you so much for those tips. I think are very easy to follow when you are thinking of switching your lifestyle into this. It's to be frank, it's not, like we said earlier, it's not easy because there's a lot of unlearning. There's a lot of habits that we need to break. I know, sugar and carbohydrate consumption isn't that easy to break because it's around us. It's everywhere. We navigate through a society that's thriving with, all of that. And we are in this environment that's we see it everywhere. We see it in the billboards. We see it around our city. It's everywhere. And it's getting harder and harder to navigate this lifestyle. But like Coach Krisna has said, community is everything. You have to find a community that will support you, because if your environment is not helping you, at least you have that community to support you within this world that we live in, right? Whether it's an online community, a group that you can join, and there's lots of communities out there that can support you within this journey. And don't be so hard on yourself when we are bound to have pitfalls, and that's okay. We are defined by how much we've bounced back from that. And so if you need help Coach Krisna is here. She talked about her journey. She talked about how you can easily add this simple actionable items that you can do today to start this journey. And I'd like for them to find you, Coach Krisna, and how can they find you?
Absolutely. So I can be found at my website, which is square one with the number wellness.com. Same handle on Twitter, square one wellness. I'm also on LinkedIn by my name, Krisna Hanks. And one thing I would add to what you just said, I just love that, is for individuals to think of a performance mindset. We're all performers. We're performers in life. And we're trying to raise our performance level to a new level. And performance mindset thinks towards the future. We can't change our past. We all arrived where we are right now, but we can change where we're going. And that change might happen by just saying, what's one thing I can do today to put me on that path moving forward?
Love that. I love that, Coach Krisna. And I urge everybody to get Finding Lifestyle Sanity, a survival guide where, Krisna talks about everything that we talked about here today: food philosophy, exercise essentials, and mindset. Thank you so much, Coach Krisna Hanks. And, thank you for being so open and honest with your journey and sharing your story here with us, with our listeners today.
Thank you so much, Lorenz. It's been truly an honor and pleasure. And thank you for all you're doing in the community. Keep sharing people's stories. It is the way forward, right? To make our community just a little bit bigger and feel like everyone has support.
Thank you so much for that. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.